AST SpaceMobile just completely blew past their earnings forecasts in all the wrong ways, and yet they are sitting on a staggering $3.5 billion mountain of cash.
Yeah, it is a weird one to look at. You rarely see misses this wide mixed with that kind of extreme liquidity.
Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. It is May 11th, 2026, and we are unpacking the Q1 numbers for AST SpaceMobile, ticker ASTS. And just to keep the lawyers happy, everything we talk about today is strictly our personal opinion. So please do not take it as financial advice. We just really like talking about space internet.
Speak for yourself. But yeah, definitely no financial advice here. Look, if you want to understand the absolute absurdity of this quarter, just look at the top line. The street was projecting around 37.5 million in revenue. They brought in 14.7 million.
Wait, so less than half?
Not even close to half. And it gets worse on the bottom line. Diluted EPS was negative 66 cents. Estimates were sitting around negative 21 cents. It is just a massive miss across the board.
Ouch. And the market reaction was, well, it was incredibly chaotic, right? Because they actually rallied pretty nicely during the regular session.
Right. Up almost 6% before the bell. And then, well, the numbers hit and it briefly spiked up near $87 in the extended hours. But by the time the actual earnings call started, the floor totally fell out. It plunged back down to the low 70s and essentially erased all of those daily gains.
Which makes perfect sense when you miss that hard. But the paradox here is that they are doing things that are, honestly, it's basically science fiction. I mean, they are beaming direct to cell phone broadband from low Earth orbit. And the report noted they hit, almost 100 megabits per second in download speeds?
98.9 megabits, yeah. From a satellite flying at 70,000 miles an hour. It's ridiculous technology. The market knows they have this massive catch basin of nearly 3 billion potential subscribers through partners like AT&T and Vodafone. So the narrative still holds weight.
Exactly. The tech is working. But the costs to get it working are ballooning quickly. Total operating expenses jumped nearly 30% quarter over quarter.
Right, up to $164 million. Engineering services and a massive leap in stock-based compensation are just eating cash right now. But the really weird detail here, the thing that stood out to me the most, is their capital expenditures.
Because they were lower than expected, actually.
Yeah, but only because they literally just pushed their rocket launch contract bills into the next quarter, which is setting up a pretty terrifying cash flow cliff.
Okay, that sounds like the exact place we need to start pulling things apart. Let's get into the details.
Yeah, so look at that capex guidance. Q1 capital expenditures landed around $257 million, which sounds like a lot, but it actually missed their own projections. And they just flat out said on the call they deferred launch payments to Q2.
Right, and Q2 is now projected at what, like $500 million?
Up to $650 million in a single quarter. Frankly, it is an absurd cash incinerator. You have these deferred invoices crashing directly into active manufacturing costs for their Bluebird satellites.
Okay, but to be fair, they are building massive satellites. I mean, these are basically cell towers the size of small office buildings flying in space.
Yes, and the logistics of getting them up there are fascinating. CEO Abel Avilan actually painted this picture that I cannot get out of my head. He was explaining how they fit these giant monolithic structures onto rockets, and he literally said, let me find it here, quote, "Listen, the way that we stack the satellites is think about tuna cans."
Tuna cans?
Yeah.
So they just smash them on top of each other?
Pretty much. They stack up to 8 of these massive arrays perfectly flush inside the nose cone of a Blue Origin New Glenn rocket. It takes intense structural engineering so they do not crush under the G-force off the pad.
Okay, that is an amazing visual. You go to the grocery store and you just buy a sleeve of space internet. But wait, did you say Blue Origin? Because I thought, well, isn't there some sort of issue going on with them right now?
Yep. Good catch. That is the glaring red flag sitting quietly in the corner. Blue Origin recently suffered an anomaly, and they are currently dealing with an ongoing FAA investigation for the New Glenn rocket.
Jeez. And AST needs that specific rocket to do the 8-stack tuna can maneuver?
Yes. Precisely. They have reaffirmed they want roughly 45 Bluebirds in orbit by the end of 2026 to secure their global service. If the FAA holds up Blue Origin for months, that whole timeline gets stretched. The $650 million capex wall is one thing, but burning operational cash while you wait for a launch provider to get clearance is a much worse kind of burn.
Right, you are just paying the engineers to twiddle their thumbs while the rocket sits grounded. Although, speaking of the engineering, we really should talk about what they are actually doing with the tech, because they are not just blasting radio waves indiscriminately anymore.
No. They have transitioned their newer block satellites over to their own custom ASICs, basically proprietary computer chips, and they're injecting AI directly into the orbital hardware.
Which sounds like every tech bingo card ever, right? Space, AI, broadband. But how does it actually work in practice?
It is actually a very elegant solution to a brute force problem. So they have this AI agent on board that predicts cellular network traffic on Earth in real time. Avalon explained it on the call, saying, quote, "The AI management is basically a way to intelligently distribute that big pipe intelligently where the users are and predicting where the users are going to be in order to allocate a slice."
Oh, I see. So instead of just blanketing a massive empty forest with high-speed data, it notices a traffic jam on a highway and beams the bandwidth exactly there.
Exactly. They have 10 gigahertz of spectrum to play with, and the AI routes it dynamically to geographic bottlenecks. It multiplies the network efficiency without needing physical expansion, which is honestly brilliant, and probably why they decided to pull so much manufacturing in-house. They now claim to build roughly 95% of their own satellite components vertically down in Texas.
Wow, from the custom chips to the carbon fiber frames, they are building a full-blown vertical monopoly.
They are trying to, yeah. It drops supply chain vulnerabilities drastically, but it also means they absorb all the overhead internally.
Which brings us right back to that ballooning cost of revenues and the Q2 cash cliff. So it sounds like they have a technological masterstroke waiting to happen, but they're incredibly reliant on a third-party rocket that might be stuck on the ground. So where does this leave them heading into next quarter?
It leaves them staring down an absolutely brutal execution curve. Because the wildest part of this whole outlook is that, well, management did not back down at all.
You mean on the full-year revenue targets?
Right. Yeah, CFO Andrew Johnson fully reiterated the numbers. He stated on the call, quote, "We expect to generate full-year 2026 revenue in the range of $150 million to $200 million.
Wow. Okay, so from a 14.7 million base today to pushing maybe 200 million by December. That implies an incredibly aggressive revenue ramp in the back half of the year.
Highly backloaded. And concurrently, he noted that adjusted operating expenses are stepping up next quarter, too. They are estimating $85 to $95 million just to absorb their expanded workforce, which basically means they are staffing up heavily to commercialize right now. They are not waiting.
Which tells me they actually trust those Blue Origin launch timelines are solid. You do not inflate payroll like that if you secretly expect a year-long FAA grounding. Plus, and we should definitely point this out, the FCC just granted them their first official SCS authority for U.S. operations. So the regulatory hurdle, which is honestly usually the scariest black box for space tech, is functionally clearing.
It is heavily de-risked domestically, yes. And internationally, they have that new joint venture, Satco, spun up with Vodafone to aggressively deploy across Europe.
Right, contributing the distribution rights. Exactly.
So structurally, the board is set. They have over $3 billion in the bank from the debt raises. The custom ASICs are proving out those peak download speeds. The telco partners are locked. At this point, it is purely manufacturing and logistics race. Can you launch 45 satellites fast enough before the operational burn catches up to you?
Can you stack the tuna cans in time? I am seriously never going to get over that visual. But yeah, if they actually hit that target by year end, they functionally own a completely new layer of the telecom industry. But if they miss, well, almost $3 billion in debt starts feeling incredibly heavy.
Yeah, gravity always wins, eventually. Unless, of course, you can reach escape velocity.
Okay, wow. That is just perfectly dramatic. I think we need to wrap up the financial side right there before you start dropping orbital mechanics equations on me.
Probably a good place to land.
Thanks for navigating this one with me, Miro. Catch you on the next call.
Take care, Susie. Goodbye, everyone.
If you want these earnings chats to just naturally show up in your feed, it might be worth following the show, which, by the way, is actually generated using AI tools, mainly so we can process hundreds of pages of financial filings in minutes and get this right out to you. If you have thoughts on the format or a ticker you want us to look at next, just drop us a line at earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or grab the X link in the show notes.
Catch you all later.